I used to see guys like that who cold called for me. They're like, yeah, if I cold call like 1,000 people, I'll probably get like 50 of them, right? No, you won't. You probably get 50 of them just on the phone, just to talk and be interested. Now you got to close them. So guys, and you just do that on data. I know exactly how many calls we can make, how many people we're going to talk to, how many voicemails we're going to get, how many receptions we're going to get, how many people are going to say, yes, send me your proposal, how many are actually going to reply to those emails, how many are going to want it. You need to know all this stuff, and you have to do that by tracking it. Then you can scale. Then you can say, I got to make 19,000 calls to hit that number. Well, then you got to get busy or get somebody else to help you. I love that, knowing that. I don't want to just fly blind. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to drive to Mississippi right now, Chris. I can figure out my way there without a GPS, but I won't be there in 4 hours.
No.
Let's show up at about 11 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
America's backbone was built on blue-collar business grit, grind, and muscle. This is where you stop working for the business, and the business starts working for you.
Blue Collar Millionaires, thank you for tuning in on another episode. We're going to be talking about the math to blue collar goals. We have seen so many people that say, I want to make, and they just throw a number out there and they have no clue of how they're going to get there. And we're at the end of 2024 to date this episode. So a lot of year-end planning should be taking place. You should be putting your goals out there, but then you got to do the reverse engineering, the math in behind that to make sure it's actually achievable. 200-300% growth is not realistic when you've got a business that's been in operation for years. Now, when you first start up, it's easy to stack 200 and 300% growth year over year for the first few years because you're just breaking into the market and being known. But when you've been in business for a little while, that is not sustainable growth. You're looking more like 15, 20% year on year growth. So, Kevin, what's some of the first things that you look at when you're setting your goals for the year and you would recommend others do so that they know it's achievable and they can actually see a path to hitting it?
What I do is, I might have big goals and write them out. If you want to use a number, I don't really just say a number. I kind of have to see it first. But let's just say you make a number, you're at 1.4 million and it's 3 million. I need to break that down, reverse engineer it. First, how many customers do I need? What's the average ticket price? What's the average profit margin on that? First of all, I don't get too carried away in grosses. I care about net profit. Most people are like, I want to do 3 million next year. I might say I did 180 net on a company. I want to do 360 net. I don't give a shit how I get there. I care that that's what ends up in my bank account. So that's why I want to know the net profit that I can do on each customer to get there. Then I also want to reverse engineer, what is my organizational chart? How many employees, how many trucks, how many days of the year can they actually work? And I just start breaking it all down. And I'll sit there on a spreadsheet all night doing stuff like that. I can't tell you how many times I did it. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. That's not going to work. And I kill it.
I love how you spoke about your Gutter King model and you were doing residential gutters and then you were looking at trying to reverse engineer getting out of the hole from some bad investments previous years and getting out of debt. And when you were looking at that model, you said, you know what? I can't get this many houses, but I can do it on apartments. And then you said, there's not that many apartments because you knew what your math was at this point. You knew what your average ticket would be on these. So then you just started saying, where do I go find this many buildings? That's when it puts you outside of your state and your area. And then at that point, you were able to say, okay, what does the model look like for me to be in multiple states?
Exactly. Because I used a factor that too many people don't do. How many days a year can you work? Mm-hmm. All right. If you're down south, you might work 225 days a year, which is 5 days a week, 250. Well, that's actually 260, 52 weeks a year. But then maybe there's going to be 40 rain days in there. So you're at 220 or 225 or somewhere. But if you're up north, it's way smaller. You're going to be maybe around 180. And if you're doing a really niche thing like gutter cleaning, then you're like, well, wait, there's only, 50 or 60 days in the spring I can do that because people would have already gotten it done or didn't need it. And then in the fall, there might be 25 days to get it done because maybe you're working Saturdays and even Sundays if you want to. Knowing those things in order to do it, I said, well, wait, what if I went down to North Carolina around Christmas and I
Mhm.
stayed there till like January 24th and I stayed in hotels? All right, I pick up another 20 days. What if I get people to do me Saturdays? I pick up 24 days. What if I can go do $5,000 a day? All right, now I picked up 120 grand. Like that's how I would do it. I always do it before. And then I say, okay, how would I execute that? How would I get those people? But too many people just throw numbers up. Yeah, I want to get to 3 million. How? Why? Why 3? Why not 4? Why 2?
Yeah.
And they're just guessing. They're not getting there. I need to see it and do it. And I try to kill my own deals. I do it on a spreadsheet and I say, okay, I could get that, but that's going to take me massive effort. That's not better than something I'm doing right now. It doesn't make sense. And what normally you find out when you do this is your little tic tac small bullshit jobs will never get you where you want to go. You
Yeah.
need to look at that because you're never going to get there. Because if you blow out an engine or you have some things, this happens in business where you got all of a sudden got to buy a new truck or you got a $5,000 repair or something. Do you really want to be doing $100 houses where you're making $30 profit? You'll be
Yeah.
out of business doing that. You need bigger jobs. And that's why I like to map it out. If I can't see it, can't do it. Last thing I used to tell guys who work for me, I love this thing. This is what all you guys can use this as an exercise. You've all watched Shark Tank. You probably know Mr. Wonderful, Mark Cuban. I used to tell guys who'd come to me with ideas 10 years ago when Shark Tank was really on. I say, hey, what if you had to come Monday and go in a room with myself because they knew me and maybe they respected me on that? Mark Cuban and Mr. Wonderful, and you got to give us this idea and show us how to do it. And if you can't show us, we're going to rip you a new asshole. What would you be doing on Monday?
Be
Because it's
working your numbers.
the ideas, and I would be basically telling them to get out of my face with that in a nice way because it'll be
Yeah.
so stupid and unwell thought. Spend a weekend on it. Dig in. You're going to go in front of Mark Cuban and Mr. Wonderful. If you can convince them, guess what? You got a winner.
So you just what it boils down to is you're breaking down what your unit costs are and then the resources that are required for you to be able to produce that unit. So for instance, a lot of people will sit there and offer multiple different types of services. And you need to break down those services independently so that you can see what service is bringing in what revenue and then that revenue, what that profit margin is. Because if you've got a $25 an hour guy working over on multiple different services, and then you start extracting that direct labor cost and your material cost, if there is any, to get you your gross profit. And then you start subtracting your overhead from the gross profit, and you realize on some of these services that you're making pennies. Now you can see I'm putting my $25 an hour resource on something that's barely making any profit where I could be making this 30% margin profit on this different service. So, what that would tell me is kill that one service line that's not producing profit, but taking the resource of a skilled person and put marketing behind the service line that is producing better profits. So, a real quick basic understanding is you have gross revenue, that's what you're invoicing your customer. You have your cost of goods sold, that's going to be your material and your direct labor, should be deducted from that. That leaves you with gross profit. Now, your gross profit is going to have all of the other expenses that it takes for you to run your business from your rent to your utilities to your fuel to your vehicle loans to the tool replacements, when they break, maintenance, repair, your admin costs, the people answering the phone, the project managers, the estimators, the accounting department, and then you're left with profit. All of that overhead can kill you. And don't forget to factor your loans in because if you're scaling, you're using debt more than likely, and you've got vehicle loans. If you've bought the building, that's a different story. We won't go on that. So don't forget your loans if you did an SBA loan, because then all of that comes off of the net profit off the P&L. You might be showing profit on the P&L, but when you factor your loans in, you might actually be going in the negative or making no money at all. So understand your unit cost, and now you can start deciding how many people it's going to take for you to produce that volume of work to create that level of profit. And now you'll know if it's achievable. If you're about to triple your business in employees, in equipment, and in jobs, that's a really tall mountain to climb in 1 year, because
Wow.
hiring is tough. Getting those customers aware of your service is tough. And then sourcing all of that equipment, and forget the trainability of the hiring. After you've hired them, you still got to train them. So now things start to get realistic and better perspective. And now you can literally set a goal up that can be a stretch goal, but you know if it's going to be achievable or not. And this is when you can get your team behind it, because now you can say, here's how we're going to hit this. This is how many jobs we got to do of this particular service, how many people we need to be hiring, the training process, how we're going to split up our trained employees so that they can work with new employees, so that those technicians can be apprentices and get trained up by our seasoned technicians. This is year end planning so that you know you're going to hit your goal the next year.
100%. And then here's the thing you could do when you're looking at your expenses, like debt expenses. This is what I used to do when I was really young. Say you have $1,000 in loans, you got a lawnmower and a truck or something, and you cut lawns and you do work for 8 months of the year. If it's $1,000, it's $12,000 a year, right? 1,000 every month. I take that 12,000, I divide it by 8. It's now 1,500. I need to be able to pay that $1,500 a month in 8 months so that I have no expenses on that downtime. You don't necessarily have to pay the 1,500, but you should be setting aside 500 every month into a money market that you're ready in the winter. I see so many guys who they don't factor in these dead time months and these slow times, and they get whatever little savings they have, they're on fumes by the time the next season starts, or they're already in some debt. You have to factor in how many days you're actually going to work in your climate. But here's another numbers thing where Chris was talking about getting customers and everything. So when you know what your customer cost is, you got to really figure out your acquisition cost, what type of marketing you're having, and you have to have data on that. Let's just say you put out flyers, you knock on doors, you use Google Ads, and you do email marketing. You have to know, hey, for every 100, for every 1,000 of these, this is my return. I see a lot of young guys. We're kind of talking to the younger guys right now, or maybe in a less experience. They say crazy things like, yeah, there's 1,000 houses in those 3 neighborhoods. I figure I'll get 20%. No, you won't. You're going to get 1 or 2%. Get
Yeah.
out of your head with that. You might later build a brand within those neighborhoods to get a lot, but I used to see guys like that who cold called for me. They're like, yeah, if I cold call like 1,000 people, I'll probably get like 50 of them, right? No, you won't. You probably get 50 of them just on the phone, just to talk and be interested. Now you got to close them. So, guys, and you just do that on data. I know exactly how many calls we can make, how many people we're going to talk to, how many voicemails we're going to get, how many receptions we're going to get, how many people are going to say, yes, send me a proposal, how many are actually going to reply to those emails, how many are going to want it. You need to know all this stuff, and you have to do that by tracking it. Then you can scale. Then you can say, I got to make 19,000 calls to hit that number. Well, then you got to get busy or get somebody else to help you. That I love that, knowing that. I don't want to just fly blind. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to drive to Mississippi right now, Chris. I can figure out my way there without a GPS, but I won't be there in 4 hours.
No.
I'll show up at about 11 o'clock tonight.
Yeah. I think that's so true right there. I mean, when you know where you're going and how to get there, you have confidence. If you're trying to get somewhere without knowing the path and the numbers, then it creates a ton of anxiety. You're going to doubt your ability to do it. You're probably going to quit before you get there because you can't trust that you're going to get there because you have no results. You know, you have no data to look at and you don't have any results yet because you haven't achieved it yet. So the only way to look at it is that historic data. And if you don't have historic data, hop on Chat GPT free version and ask, what is the standard close rate for email marketing in this business? Like there's so much information on the internet that can give you some type of benchmark. Better yet, hop inside of the Blue Collar Millionaire Facebook group and ask that question. And you're going to get inflated numbers. So go ahead and expect that because
Yeah,
everybody's going to promote inflated numbers because there's an ego kick
of
there.
course.
And then after you've kind of got your idea, then get inside of a group of entrepreneurs that get real and set the ego aside. And you can do something like Boardroom Elite that we host. And that's where you've got other entrepreneurs and they're opening their books and they're saying, hey, here's what I close in my industry on an email campaign, on a cold call campaign, on what I'm paying for local service ads. Here's how many people are calling me. Here's how many times my phone rings through the day and what my close ratio is, my booking ratio. Like, you got to get around other entrepreneurs and they will help you understand what is realistic. I think that was so cool that you just said they sit there and think they're going to get 20% of the neighborhood. We wished it would be that way, but it's like you said, until you have strong brand dominance in that area, that's not likely, because people go with what they know, like, and trust, and they don't know, like, and trust you yet. So you just got to build yourself up there. What else we want to mention before we close this out?
Speaking on getting in kind of a group, even if it's great to get in a paid group or mastermind, you're going to go much faster. But even if a guy wanted to just go on Blue Collar Millionaire and he was a landscaper and he was doing just lawns and stuff like that, I would reach out to other guys in other areas who are doing that and create my own little 3 or 4 person little text group where you help each other. Maybe you jump on a Zoom. You'll go so much faster. Ask them what's going on. Maybe there's some guys in there who are 5 or 6 years ahead of you and they say, "Hey, you know what didn't work? This." And you're like, "Ooh, I was kind of starting that." And then they say, "You know what really does work? This thing is bread and butter." And they'll show you how to do it. You got to get around those things, but you got to know numbers, and then you got to be valuable in those groups. You got to come in there, put your ego aside, don't bullshit people, ask for help. Chris and I love helping people who want to be helped. I know I hate helping people who their first 3 minutes of talking to me, they tell me everything they used to do, but somehow don't anymore. Just ask me the question. I'll tell you
Last
what I,
thing I want to mention on this year-end planning is y'all need to be asking the question of, what's the purpose of your business? What's the mission? And I know this sounds woo-woo, but this is extremely important, because when you have a team, they need to know what you're about. So you need to have core values, because those core values help you hire, fire, and make decisions by them. And you need to live those core values out as a leader. If you're not living those core values out, then your team will not represent those core values. Your team will only be as strong as the leader inside that organization. So if you're showing up late, then expect your team to feel okay to show up late. If you're cutting corners on jobs, or you allow them to cut corners on jobs, then that's what they're going to think the standard is. So look at your mission. Why? What are you in business for? And then for me, I just did a business planning for one of my companies a month ago, coming up for 2025. We did this about a month ago, and our mission changed a little bit. And my mission, I realized, is I wanted to provide high quality for my customers, and I wanted to provide a greater financial future for my team members. So I wanted to be a resource of quality for the marketplace, and I wanted to be a habitat for financial growth for everyone that is a part of my organization. And then we had to sit there and ask, what does that look like? What resources do we need to employ and provide for both of those things to be true, for that to really be a mission and us back that mission up? And then we have our core values, and then we have our unique ability. Like, why would the customer choose us over the competition? You got to ask yourself that. A good indicator is looking at what people respond in testimonies and reviews, and when they call you and when you do your quality follow-ups, what they're bragging about. Is it the appearance? Is it the technician's attitude? Is it the communication level? Is it the transparency of everything that you do? Like, all of these are terms you need to know, because this helps you understand how to set up your marketing and what resources you need to pull in for next year. Now that you know your numbers and you got your revenue goal, you need to be building on that business model to make sure that everybody can come in alignment and be on the same ship together. They need to know what they're driving for. They need to understand what matters inside of that business. It's a living, breathing entity to the state and to the federal government, and you need to treat it that way.
yeah. All right. Well, here's 5 things I'd want to know if you guys: total revenue, gross profit, net profit, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value of customer. If I know those 5 things, I can write up all kinds of ideas and ways to make money. But if I don't know those things, you guys might not know those things. You're just kind of throwing shit against the wall at that point and hoping it all works out. I need to know that. Chris, what are we going to talk about next time?
All right, man. We're going to talk about next week raising the standards in your company. So tune in, raising the standards. This is what's going to allow you to stop moaning and groaning about your team and why they're not doing what you expect. You got to raise the standards. See you guys next week.
See you next week.